Hey, hello everyone. Welcome to the ComicBase Livestream. That's probably as good an opening as we've ever had for the show. Thank you all for joining us here. I'm your host, Pete Bickford. I'll be talking for, well, at least the next half hour, probably not more than the hour for sure, because I got to get to a concert tonight. I'm going to go see Steely Dan, one of the last bucket list bands I've got that I haven't seen back in the day. Unfortunately, Walter Becker's clearly not with them anymore, but Donald Fagen is still going, and yeah, I can't wait to see that. They'll be playing right in Franklin, my hometown here, which I'm coming to you from just outside of Nashville, and yeah, we should have a good time. Thanks for everyone for joining us here. We're going to be talking about comics and comic-based related type things. If this is the sort of thing that you enjoy, please hit the like and subscribe thing. By the way, we're also trying some new things here in terms of the mics and other types of things. If you give me kind of a quick, thumbs up, thumbs down as to how the sound sounds to folks like that, very curious to see how that's going. I hope this is an improvement. We were testing out before the show and it seemed like it was going well, but I'll let you be the judge. Anyway, just a quick hi to everyone in the chat here. Oro, first in as always, or as often. Welcome from Minneapolis. Andre, great to see you. Rob Weinberg, we were just chatting before the show, and great to see you here. Mike Beam, our mod, Gregory Hecht. So everyone behave yourselves. The mod is in the house. Thomas B, Agent DeCamp, Tim Gilbreth, and yeah, I'm looking forward to the show here. It says I have new comments. I have to scroll. Still getting this StreamYard thing going. Oro suggests maybe a little refresher course on CGC procedures, especially the piece of the action they take for the more valuable books, please. No big deal. We'll be getting into a little bit of it. I didn't review their terms and conditions recently, and because they're always changing, I don't want to say things out of turn. So I'll keep it broad in general, if that's okay for you folks. We can cover it later on if we need to. All right. So Richard Scott, nice to see everyone. And looks like the weather is finally, finally peeking out here. Agent Camp reminds everyone, smash that like button. It's like, no concert for you. What? Let's see here. And Greg says the sound quality, I'm trying to read the rest of it here, sounds like you're talking into a mason jar. What? That's a bummer. It should be better than usual. But I don't know. Other people seem to think it sounds okay, so we'll... except Richard says Bizarro speak. Audio sounds a little tinny. Is this better or worse if I get closer here? Because the sound check sounded really good to me, but hint of an echo chamber. Let me, I'm going to try one thing on the sound here. Give me just a second, gentlemen. And... let me do a quick setup on here and change up. Where are we at here on audio? Okay. Real quick heads up on that one. Is that better, worse, or the same? Did whatever echoes or weird things like that, did that get better or worse? Someone in the chat. I'll keep an eye on the chat and I'll keep talking. I'm assuming. Oh nope, I got a no bueno from the mod on that one. Okay, well let's go back to the settings I had before. Oh, wait, what? Now you're driving me crazy. Now I'm getting a better, and the mod is giving me like the thumbs down. So I don't know, man. I don't know. The chat seems to think it's better, so I'm gonna roll with the best. Maybe it's a StreamYard thing for us inside the house here. So I'm gonna check your mic settings, and I'm gonna turn on. I don't know if that helps the mod, but we'll see if that helps. Okay, anyway, so let's press on with the show. Thank you so much, everyone, for the feedback. There seems to be a big difference if you're listening on a smartphone versus a PC surround system. Possibly. What I'm doing here in particular is I did something I haven't done in a while. I changed it up so that we actually put the mic in the shot, which allows me to put my face hole closer to the microphone, so you can get that cool radio effect, which was so missing from the previous broadcasts. Anyway, we're just gonna roll with it, guys. All right, so We're back after a few weeks off. Thank you everyone for hanging out through the break. I did some work down in Florida, my place down there. Came back. The 4th of July weekend was a bit of a crazy mess, and then we've just honestly we've been heads down working on some very cool new things that I hope to very much show folks in the very near future. This will be we're pulling in. Well, I guess my first announcement on this one is we are going to be handing out the first of our serial numbers and the membership joins for our Slack channel. If you want to be part of the testing for the next major version of ComicBase, that is all going to go on tomorrow. I will be starting to issue all those to the people who want to be part of the interiors testing on that. And if you haven't done so beforehand, let me go ahead and give you my data on this guy, my deets on this guy, which I think if I put up the key should reflect on the screen. Let's see if that goes. Let's try it again. No. Oh, there we go. All right, so there you are. Peter Bickford. Please send me a note to pbickford@human-computing.com. I'll sort of put my head over the thing. And please send me a note if you want to be part of the testing group on that one. We're going to be kicking that one off very, very shortly. And it should be a good time. So let's roll with it. Okay, so let me see what's going on here. And of course, melee that like and subscribe button, and if you haven't already done so, and we'll keep things rolling down here. So, one bit of moderately interesting, at least to me, news. You remember several weeks ago we talked about what sort of the technologies that were on the horizon that we were all getting kind of excited about. Two things. One is we are apparently the construction in our area of ComicBase Central here has been slightly hampered by the need to do apparently additional duct work or conduit work. I don't know what they're doing, but apparently we were expecting to have fiber serving our main server location by the end of June. Apparently that's pushed back a couple of weeks, but they say they're getting close, and I can actually see the people hanging wire and doing things like that. So I'm really looking forward to this one. When that happens, we should be able to serve up data about 40 times faster. Which I think would be pretty freaking amazing. I've got to turn off Slack here. It's terribly distracting while you're trying to do a show. That's a major deal for us here. The other thing that happened recently is I've actually just pulled the trigger on my own next computer. The thing that drove me over the edge, I was sitting there thinking, well, the old machine isn't doing bad, but Samsung 980 Pro SSDs are $194 for the 2 terabyte model today, thanks to Amazon Prime, as well as it seems like Samsung is either clearing inventory or just syncing up their own sales cycle with things. I saw the same price over at B&H. But if you are in the market for new computer type stuff, the Prime deals are actually pretty impressive. And one thing that I did not see coming, apparently Prime Day is, it's the day part is more of a state of mind than anything else. Apparently it stretches for a couple of days. And interestingly, a lot of the really more compelling pricing that I've been watching came about today. So on the first day, it was like, I can wait to see on this one. And then several things that were, formed the back of a new computer all got discounted by 15-20%, more than they were yesterday for today. So if you are in the market for new tech or things like that, go on, check out what Amazon Prime's doing, and also shop the other sites, B&H, Newegg, etc. Because there's there's actually going to be some deals on the market. Also, Nvidia is looking to apparently be clearing stock, and so what they're doing now is they have. They've also started doing really very significant, like a third off sometimes, reductions on the prices of their very high-end graphic cards. So I don't necessarily recommend that you spend $1,500 on a graphic card, but if you are, looking for something new, or if you've been rocking the same graphic card for the last 5 years, like some of us have been, it's actually possible to get them. Is good news number one, and also Nvidia seems to be clearing out some of the higher end models. So it actually is one of those things where now is actually not a bad time to pull the trigger on that sort of thing. So I'll keep you all posted as my tech stuff develops. I'll let you know how the new build comes, if there's anything interesting that comes out. But I'm looking forward to that. So let's talk about expensive things, and that's my segue. I actually planned that one out. And this show is going to be specifically talking about revisiting a topic that we talked about last time out. Well, actually, I'm going to say, I don't know, about 6 months ago? No, not even, about 3 months ago, which is the increasing gulf between high-end CGC performance for very expensive comics and low-end CGC performance. And when we were having a review of our plans going forward on this one, I was more or less talking to the staff and saying, well, look, CGC used to be more of a lottery ticket where, if you could take a regular book and if you got it sent away, got it graded, and if it came back with a very high grade, 9.6, really 9.6 and above, but when you got to like the 9.8s and certainly the 10.0s, you didn't just get a more valuable version of that same comic book. I mean, it isn't that it would just sell for the price of the slabbing plus some bonus. Suddenly the bonus would be 8, 20 times what you would expect to see if it were not in the slabbed condition. At the same time, we've had an increasing number of auction sales at the very high end of the market for books that already cost 5, 6, sometimes even 7 figures. And I think it's time for us to get very serious about the fact that the same CGC multiplier effect really doesn't apply in those cases. What you're seeing, I mean, if I take, let's cue the book on this one. So let me switch over to number 1 here. Let's take this guy right here, Captain America, 9.4. This one sold back in April. And by the way, brief digression into whining about CGC's fluid grading system. If we zoom in on this guy up there and you stare at the M, you'll see that someone has scribbled some initials on the whole thing, which I would think, if I were fairly grading this myself, I would say that counts as small initials or date stamp, to quote the Overstreet Grading Guide, which means that this ought to be a 7-point, a very fine copy of this comic book. No, instead, according to CGC, this is a 9.4, which you could only get if those things were nearly imperceptible. So I guess imperceptibility is in the eye of the beholder, maybe? Although they gave similar grades to things like the pay copy of the Marvel Comics #1, where there's scribbled all over the comic book. So yeah, writing guys, if they're going to pay you to be a grading company, consistent standard would be kind of novel and cool, and maybe you should do it. Just saying. All right, anyway, but when we're talking about a comic book like this, so this one here, I believe, sold for $3 million and change in CGC, 9.4, which, as all of us know, just means near mint, right? And what we have to do here is we have to reconcile the idea that if I had a copy of, say, Dazzler #1, and I'd taken it and I'd put it in, so if I can do the picture-in-picture thing. Yeah, there we go. If I had Dazzler #1 and I had taken that and gotten it CGC and it came back as a 10.0, it's the best Dazzler #1 you've ever seen, I actually could sell that for some multiples of its cover price. I don't know if I'd get 28 times, which is the market average when we analyzed all the books that were on the market during the, really the dawn of CGC-ness. I don't know if that would be the realized price on a 10.0 Dazzler #1, but on the other end, maybe it would. But one thing I know for dang sure is if I take, the CGC multiplier for near mint copies, and apparently I'm flag on the play here from the mod. Let me just have a look here. Drop those quotes. Let's see. So we can see your email. Oh, sorry about that. Apparently we have more. We have Oral's quote on screen. So let me go ahead. Sorry about that. We're still working on the back chats here, so let me quickly jump into full screen, losing the picture-in-picture, and let's go to the chat. So that's what happens when I get too far ahead of myself. So give me just a second to catch up here. Okay, so that is not the one that you're probably thinking of. Let me look at... Dude, sorry, I'm not sure. I'm not sure which one you're thinking of. But if you are thinking of... nope, not sure. This is looking to drop those quotes in this chat so you see the full screen. Don't know, man. You're confusing me, Greg. Yes, talking with Moz, it's fun. If you can put it in the interior chat on that one, I'll see if I can find it. And if I miss something terrible, flag it down to me, and I'll see what I can do. Sorry, but I gotta carry on with the show. Oh, the production of live TV. You gotta love this stuff. All right, so. And I am going to do a quick review of the chat here just to make sure there's nothing else here. Let's see. Agent Camp says, love beta testing. Gave the internet situation already. CGC is getting bad. Oh, Agent Camp says CGC is getting bad with quality. Lots of vids on YouTube about it. I can't disagree. And let me see. And Oro says, ComicBase TV, been up all the time. Yeah, not sure. Okay, so, Greg and Steve, and now he says, okay, it's gone now. Don't know. At some point, I'm gonna have the whole thing explained to me, but I don't know. I'm watching the program output as well as the StreamYard thing, and I'm trying to keep on top of it. Not sure if I'm doing a great job, but this is the professionalism you've come to expect from this show, and I'd hate to ever let you all down. All right, so getting back to things. So when we're talking about, let's go ahead and put it back up on screen. So when we're talking about books like this, the $3 million Captain America #1, and its converse would be, a 10.0 or a 9.6 copy of Dazzler #1, right? So it's my shots for like one of the most valuable and one of the least intrinsically valuable comic books of all time. What we have to do when we're in ComicBase is we have to interpolate grading from, let me back it up a little bit when we talk about how we do grading in ComicBase. The values in ComicBase are derived from looking at something like 2.1, it's actually pushing 2.2 million prices every single week of what's going on in the market and what things have sold for recently, both on Atomic Avenue and Heritage Auction Galleries. And we basically run a rolling market average of that, and that's where the pricing comes from. But from that, what we're really trying to do is we're trying to compute the near mint price for all the books that are available on the market at a given moment. Now, even though 2.1 million is a huge amount of data to grind every week, we don't have the ability really to give you the rolling price of every comic in every grade every week. And so in order to be able to generalize the price we see on comic books somewhat, we have a grading setup which is based around standard breakdowns, which are kind of like industry averages for, if I knew the near mint price of something, what would the very fine or the very good price be. And that's found under setup when you go to grading. I'm sorry, not this one. When you go down to setup and then go to grading right down here. And let me see if I'm going to try to zoom this in. I think if I'm cool about it, I might be able to get this on screen. No, this is just impossible to do with the StreamYard. I'm sorry about that, guys. I don't know how people do it if they got more and more monitor, but I'm just I'll read off the numbers to you. But basically, starting from near mint at 100%, in general, if you said, well, I've got a copy of just annual comic book and I've got it in very fine, and say, well, it's worth about 2/3, called 66% of what it would be if it was near mint. Now, remember, very fine is a tiny, tiny amount of defects. It's like a non-color, cover breaking 1/4 inch bend. Going a little bit more, so something like, just take the same 1/4 inch bend in the corner and make it color breaking, and now you're into like fine territory, and there you've dropped down to about 1/3 of what the near mint value would be on average, and it goes down from there. Now, beyond that, though, you have the idea of what the Cgc grades go for, and these, as you can see, are just they might be surprising if you haven't encountered them before. So in other words, if I took the same near mint comic book and let's say it was worth $100, if I got it and it was in CGC 9.4, which means it's a near mint, right? And it's just, that's all it is, near mint. But if it was CGC'd, I would expect that thing to sell on average for somewhere around $400. And the grades go, they kind of cross the line of what near mintitude would be around a CGC 8.5. And they drop, it's CGC doesn't always command a massive premium, especially when you get to the very low grades. But when you get to the higher than near mint grades, they quickly get into really jackpot territory. So CGC 9.6 goes for about 6 times what the unslabbed equivalent book would go for in near mint. CGC 9.8 goes for about 12 times as much. CGC 9.9 is 26 times as much. And CGC 10.0, the rarely, actually I would say suspiciously rarely seen 10.0 copy, clocks in around 28 times what a unslabbed near mint, perfectly newsstand fresh copy of that same comic book would go for. Well, that is as may be. So in other words, if we're talking about regular comic books, if we're talking about, Our Army at War, nothing, issue nothing much, or Dazzler #1, or Cable #1, all those numbers have got a lot of data behind them, and they hold up as well as these things, can go, not too badly. But one thing we know for darn sure isn't true is when we're talking about Captain America Comics #1, or, these comic books that, cost $300,000. I didn't take this thing does not merit $300,000 because it's slabbed. It merits $3 million. It doesn't merit that because it's slabbed. In other words, if I were to take the slab off of this one, it wouldn't suddenly become a $750,000 comic book. It doesn't enjoy the same 4 times premium that a theoretical unslabbed copy of Captain America Comics #1 would go for. What that is really coming down, and we've had to recognize this over time, is that the market for, where CGC plays a role in the market has really bifurcated quite a bit. When CGC first came on the scene, it was really a kind of a, first of all, a lot of people were saying, what, you can take comic books, stick them in plastic? What are you crazy? You won't be able to read them. Because where they came from originally was coins, where if I took a coin, I encapsulated it, in plastic and stuck a little sticker on the thing and said, this thing we've evaluated very clearly, and it is in this particular grade. I didn't really lose anything I value about that coin. I mean, being able to touch the bare metal probably doesn't bring a lot of joy to most people. I can flip the thing over, I can see both sides of it very clearly. Nothing really seriously was lost. But when they moved into comic books, people treat it with a great deal of suspicion. People were saying, wait a minute, by encasing this comic book in plastic, I'm really losing the thing that makes it a comic book, which is the ability to read it. And what they found out very quickly is, yes, you did change it from a comic book. You change it into a different kind of collectible altogether. You change it into the kind of collectible that would only, frankly, it gets bought by people who wouldn't necessarily ever read the original comic book, among other things. But you also found out that it prices out in the market completely different than the unslabbed comic book would, which is that's the genesis of where these crazy grade breakdowns came from. Is you really could take a near mint copy of any old comic book, slab it, get a 9.4 grading on it, and have people perfectly willing to pay 4 times the slabbed price for something that they now couldn't even read. But while that had a lot of interest for folks when they started, it was a little slower developing that people would go and take their precious older comic books and get those slabbed. There was a lot of suspicion around the idea, is this as good as Mylar? Is this going to, repel light and all the things that damage comic books in quite the same way? And within a few years, those kind of fears largely went away. People stopped worrying about that, and we saw the emergence of something that the comic market hadn't had hugely up to that point, which was online auctions from people who never had a chance to see the comic book in question. So you had people, where once upon a time, if you wanted to sell your Action Comics #1, you had to go to Christie's or something like that, and it would come up once in a blue moon. They would hold a comic auction, and that's where I believe Nick Cage sold his copy of Action #1 or something like that. But these things were very rare. But as soon as it became possible to establish what felt like an objective standard for what the grade was of particular comic books, and what I'm really trading is this hard to damage piece of plastic, this comic in slabbed piece of plastic, then suddenly the market took off in a huge way. And so we've been reporting for years now of just record-breaking auction sale after record-breaking auction sale. And it's just absolutely astounded people. And so anyone who has very high-end collections got into the market and said, well, okay, I guess I'm going to get my books slabbed. Even though it brings me great joy to open them up and very carefully leaf through them, as a security, it makes a lot of sense for me to pay crazy amounts to this grading company to go ahead, have them evaluated by somebody to come up with a grade, slab them in plastic, and ship them back to me. And one of the things that I'm still a little bit agog of, and it goes to Oral's point a little bit, is that the grading companies figured out that not only can I charge you stupid amounts of money for the process of grading it. I could charge you a couple $300 and more. But they also started going into the thing where they said, and we'll charge you a percentage of the value that the grade brings in the price guides. So it isn't just, $500 to grade your Golden Age classic comic book. Now it's $500 plus 1% of whatever this now huge price is. I'm not sure if the percentages are still 1%, it might be 2%, and I wouldn't be surprised if there isn't some variance by grading service, but the idea that you'd price in the value of the comic as part of the grading fee is actually gotten to be standard, and that to me, is largely shocking. Well, going back to our tale of two comic books, Dazzler #1 and Captain America Comics #1, it really shows a place where our attempts to extrapolate the value differences for CGC comic books just completely fall apart. Because once CGCing your books stopped being once it stopped being kind of a speculative move, it stopped being like a lottery ticket you could buy to see if I could get a really upscaled price for my kind of generic e-comic. And instead, what happened is, in order to play in this bold new world of online auctions, the table stakes, really the price you had to pay to even play in the market, was that the books got slabbed. They got graded by someone who wasn't you, and ideally a large, well-known grading service. And at that point, then they could be transacted like a security. And at that, one thing that I think we're a little late realizing, I think we're realizing it before other people are realizing, because I haven't seen split grading before, but having looked into the issue some, and we brought it up a number of months ago, but I think we've had some time to process the idea some more at this point, we really need to bifurcate the grading in ComicBase at some point to realize that the jackpot multipliers of low-graded comic books simply do not apply. When applied to these big comic books, the ones that cost, to pick a number out of the hat, call it $500 or more in terms of a near mint value and up. You just don't see the times 10, times 20, type of bonuses, even when they wind up being incredibly good copies. More importantly, you don't see the times 4. For something that's near, that's very fine. If you're talking about a $50,000 comic book, it doesn't become a $200,000 comic book because it got slabbed. What happens is the $50,000 comic book just couldn't be sold unless it was slabbed. And so I think what we're looking at now is we really need to have two different ways of treating CGC grades in ComicBase, or at least for spitballing our evaluations. One is for high-dollar books, one is for relatively more pedestrian books, and a decent split, seems to be somewhere around $500 is where the breakover point should be. Now, granted, if all the data in the universe, it was possible to have all the transactions for every comic book that had ever been sold between two parties, period. And if these books came up often enough so you could start developing more sophisticated curves. Yes, it would be great to have a much more sophisticated model for how different grades and splits and things like go down. And ideally, yeah, you would love to. If wishes were, if wishes were horses, beggars could ride, something like that. But if you could have anything you wanted, I would love it if we, could, develop an individualized price curve for every comic book on the market in every grade. That would be terrific. And it will never happen on our planet, because we're crunching more data than I've ever known anyone else to ever touch, and we can't get close to that one. I'm infuriated when we don't get closer than we've gotten to some of these big books. But as a way of getting, at least realizing that when you're dealing with a comic at auction that's transacting in those marketplaces, that you're really talking about a very, very different place than a comic that sells for $300 on eBay, and you need to start doing your math differently. I think it's about time that we kind of take that one on, and so that's what we're looking at. So I've been talking for a while here. I'm going to go to the chat here because I'll probably discover what the ruckus was from before. All right, so let me see what we're doing here. If I can get my mouse back. Come on, boy, here we are. All right, wow, okay. So Gregory's on point. Oh my, okay, and I see we've been spammed in the meantime. Hopefully we got that handled. Okay, so let me see where we started. Wow, a lot. Okay, so the spammers seem like they kicked into the stat pretty good. But yeah, all right. So I think we're going to start around here. So Armand Greg points out, I suspect the CGC multiplier is not linear. In other words, the multiplier is greater for more expensive books than less expensive books. The same. Great thoughts on this. Yeah, I absolutely agreed. What we're kind of coming around to is the idea of, while it'd be wonderful to have, again, infinite numbers of data points to model that nonlinearity, I think the least we should be looking at doing at this point is establishing thresholds where you realize that you're kind of in one world versus another world once you hit a certain point. So it should let us get much closer to the way that these things work when you're talking about big books at auction as opposed to little things on eBay or things like that. Okay, so let's go spam, and go get him, Greg. Let's see here. Nothing after 1980 needs to be CGC'd. Yeah, it depends on what, Lauren, it depends on why you're getting your book slabbed. The CGC used to run these ads, and I didn't have enough time to dig them up. I think somewhere in the universe I kept a photo file of some of this stuff. The idea was they would take a book that wasn't particularly hard to find, like a creepy featuring Vampirella or something like that, and something that there were 30,000-40,000 copies of in near mint in the world. And they say, okay, yeah, this one went for $120 in near mint condition on eBay, but the same one CGC just went for $700 or some crazy thing like that. And they would run these ads, for quite a while in Comics Buyer's Guide and other places, basically talking about the idea that these things were acting like lottery tickets. They weren't acting like the same book graded. They were acting like you'd transformed it into a new collectible. And, even though I don't personally do a lot of CGCing, this is not my world that I personally prefer to play in. We look at enormous amounts of market data, so we see how the world at least operates. So I'm not going to deny, like if I had a friend with just crazy, exceptionally preserved copies of halfway valuable comic books. I mean, not something that goes for $4 in near mint, but maybe something goes for $40 in near mint. But if I had I had a friend with just they were that person at the comic shop who was, leafing through 40 copies of the same issue in order to find the most perfect one, and that's the one they brought home, and they never touched it with bare hands, and they stuck it in Mylar from the day it was born, and if they're that guy, and so they've got a bunch of books they think might come back as 9.8s and 10.0s from CGC. I'd have to tell, as a friend, I'd have to say, you ought to at least consider, sending some away and grading them and seeing if you make some money. Because, yeah, I mean, there is a lottery ticket effect, and if you think you might win, then, there you go. By the way, speaking of lottery tickets and expensive things, I'm told today that the Powerball did not hit for anybody, so if you do like lottery tickets, apparently it's up like 480 million now, so... knock yourself out. That's another ticket you can buy. Anyway, all right. Jet City Comics says, let me see if I can get that comment to actually appear. I've seen a small bet on CGC 9.2 and other things that would lead me to believe it wasn't great of error. Yeah, absolutely. On a previous live stream, I took a Supergirl #1, the second series one, where there was like a 4-inch rip in the back cover. You could see it right through the casing, and it came back as a 9.8 from them. And the guy who sold it to me had just taken it over to the CGC guys at Comic-Con and said, "What the hell, guys? It's got like a 4-inch rip in the back. Why does it have a 9.8? And the CGC guy apparently said, "Well, what are you complaining about? This is 9.8. It really was this complete departure from valuing the comic book and instead in valuing the collectible it had been morphed into through the power of a plastic case and a sticker. All right, so let's see here. All right. Agent of Camp says, I always say comic is always worth what someone will pay for it. No one, if no one wanted that book, it wouldn't be worth anything. Yeah, I mean, that's the bottom line on pricing, period. It's, how, the price of anything is what you're willing to pay for it. The trick we've got is both as ComicBase trying to guide people into having some kind of rational value for your collection, for insurance or your own, transactions. We're just trying to get close to what the market value is. I mean, our overall theory is that if we start the conversation, close, then market data will fill us in more as we go, and as things hit the market, you will find out pretty well what the market price is. The problem gets super hard, and one would say even insoluble when you start talking like I think the ComicBase price on cable #1 is probably within a nickel of if you sold your copy on the open market, what you'd get for it, because there's so many transactions on that one. It's so frequently transacted. It's transacted in all in near mint 90% of the time. So I mean that one, yeah, that price is tight. I believe in that price. When you start talking about what's the price of Captain America Comics #1, when you may only see 4 of these hit the market in a given year, and you might see them at wildly different grading standpoints. You might see one in 3.0. Matter of fact, we did see one in 3.0. You'll see another one in 9.4, or at least what they call 9.4, despite the writing. And they could vary from the baseline we've set up by 70, 80% It becomes a circle that's impossible to square. One thing that would help greatly is if we were treating this as a high-value comic book and the multipliers associated with high-value multipliers were close to what we really truly believe them to be. So in other words, if I took a theoretical near mint copy of Captain America Comics #1 that had not been slabbed. Somehow this is the one copy that was perfect, or near perfect, but had never been exposed to the CGC guys. If that beast even exists anymore, the act of slabbing it probably adds some value. In other words, it's not a 1-to-1. So I mean, slabbing did make it more marketable. It will sell for more than the unslabbed copy will. But I know it won't sell for 4 times what the other one will. And we're seeing this also. It's funny because we're seeing more and more market data of some heritage auction ones of books that hit the market, that are $300-400 comic books, and they won't even say they're in raw form, but Heritage will say it's a 7.5. So at least someone with some credibility has their name on this thing, saying that what you're getting from us, you can have some kind of faith and trust in. It's kind of what Christie's used to do back in the day, is they would describe the book lovingly, and they would say, and our experts evaluate it to be a near mint minus, whatever the thing was, But yeah, so sorry. Got about 8 different, rattles I'm trying to avoid, but yeah, it's. I do think we need to establish a break where the high value books come in not with times 400% for the near mint one, but maybe it's times 120% or 130%, or something like that for the near mint equivalent of a slabbed versus unslabbed $50,000 book. But it's a much more modest multiplier. And the other thing that's nice if we do embark on this is we were complaining beforehand in previous podcasts of, every single time one of these award, these record-shattering sales would come in for like an Amazing Fantasy, 15, or a Spider-Man #1, or any of these big books. All of us here at the ComicBase on the pricing side would have to sit there and say, well, this one just came in at 2.5 times the with the expected guide on this whole thing, and then we'd have to make a single one-off decision on what we think this book in near mint, if one existed, would go for, and we'd be keeping in mind that the program wants to multiply or divide times 4, or divided by 4, and we're trying to shoot for some sensible region of where you could peg the near mint price of this thing, so it wouldn't completely leave someone with a poor copy in the dust or a very good copy in the dust, and at the same time wouldn't leave you completely gobsmacked if if the near mint copy or the 9.0 copy you've got just sold at auction, you don't want to have it come up at 3 or 4 times the ComicBase estimate for that value. So I do think we probably need to move toward a world where the high value books are coming in with much more modest multipliers on their graded values versus the low books. Anyway, all right. On to other comments. Jesse says, I will see a CGC 6.0 with a missing coupon. How's it possible? It's possible because, frankly, CGC knows they can get away with sloppy work. I mean, if you are actually living in a world where a ripped copy of a Supergirl, with a 4-inch rip in the back can be called a 9.8, and they know most people will treat it as if it is 9.8, then they know that what they're really doing is manufacturing. And and it's kind of funny because, I mean, when we go ahead and buy things from there, like when even after we see this, if we still go and send our books to them for grading, then we're participating in the scam at a certain point. I mean, it's, we know that this is the way the market works, and so whether they're adding value or not, we're just playing along because we know that that's how people on the other end will, in many cases, transact the book. Honestly, it's cynical as hell. And anyway, okay. So Brian says, I left a CGC CBCS and make an arbitrary grading. I think it rules the impact probably tens of millions of dollars in comic values with little input from others and even less explanation. And to that I'd also add in. There is a little bit of a subculture from people who will get their books back, not like the grade on it, crack it open, take it out of its sealer, wait a few months, send it back in for grading, and often get grades that are markedly different than the grade they got last time. And as soon as they keep on shopping until the grade comes back the way they want. Within reason, you can get away with that stuff, but it's all part of the game, I guess. All right. Let me see here. Agent Camp says, I own slabbed books, but they are ones I really like and have a reader copy of. Yeah, that's a good way to go. I mean, that basically represents the same kind of books I've got. Is anything I've got slabbed, I've also got another way to read it because I like comics. All right. Let me see if there's anything else we got to get to. Oh, Greg says, today's moderating activity has been brought to you by Neptune's Dagger, a pale ale from Armada Brewing Company, East Haven, Connecticut. Yes, you have to put on my announcer voice for this one. Yes, the knives are out for the spammers. Yes, thank you, by that way, very much to our moderator. It is crazy how much spam crap you get, and we can't tell you how much we appreciate you. All right, so let's see here. Sounds like some really good beer. All right, let me see. Anything else that some little talks about moderation. Greg also likes to remind everyone, don't forget we have a dedicated thread on the CB message boards where you can request live stream topics and demos. All right, so I think that more or less catches me up. And thank you, Agent DeCamp, for the time check. And he says, yeah, I hear they pay like $15 an hour for graders. I don't know what they pay their graders. It's I know they were hiring for people, no experience necessary, will train. Doesn't necessarily mean anything's wrong. I mean, honestly, I don't have a beef with anybody in this market who's actually adding value. I mean, I do think if you can take a book, put your name on it, and say, like, we looked at this thing very carefully, and we believe it to be in this condition. To the extent that your word's good, I think that's a legit adding of value. I get really hinky about the idea that you're going to now take a piece of the value you added, because I don't know how that's anything but corrupting. It's like I don't pay a home inspector. If I'm buying a home inspector, I don't pay a home inspector based on a percentage of the defects he does or doesn't find. It's like I'm paying you to do a job and give me a fair evaluation using your expertise. And the fact that what you come back with will, change the value or the work of my, the work I've got to go into in order to sell or buy a house, that ought to be aside from the game. If you get paid based on that, again, I don't know how that does anything but corrupt the process. So I just gotta say that part stinks to high heaven. But okay, let me wrap up here, and then I got to get out of here because the folks who brought us Reelin' in the Years, Deacon Blues, and oh so many more, they're not going to wait for us, and so I'm not going to miss this show. So here is what our current thinking is on this one, and I very much would love it if you guys have the kind of collections I'm about to talk to. If you would reach out to us, and I'll put my info up on the screen one more time. Which next time I do this, I'm gonna move the Chiron down just ever so slightly, because anyway, pbickford@human-computing.com. But yes, I would love it if you'd reach out and give us both your thoughts on this one, as well as, and I'm going to ask us a special ask on this one. What we're thinking is we're going to establish a high dollar grading percentage. So we have right now with all our grades in ComicBase, we have a percentage of near mint, and we have that everything that applies to all the books regardless of their value. What we're thinking we're going to do is we're going to establish a second tier, which is the high dollar percentage, and those high dollar percentages are going to be much closer to the Overstreet breakdowns you see for unslabbed books. They will reflect that. Again, I do think there is a reality in that the process of slabbing does add something to the market price of the book. It just doesn't add the kind of multipliers you see for low dollar. And so we're going to add essentially a high dollar percentage, which is much less vigorous in terms of how much it departs from the standard unslabbed Overstreet breakdown. So just to throw a number out at random, maybe high dollar slabbed near 9.4 gives you 120% of near mint. For books over, say, $500, or maybe it's 130, 140, but it's not 400%. So we'll be developing those numbers, and then I want to run it on many people's collections and see how the numbers affect the values, and then see if we believe the truth is, if we're getting closer to the truth or further away, if we're just complicating things unnecessarily. Now, one problem we've got is the second we do this stuff, if you're first of all, let me tell the people who don't need to worry about a thing I'm saying. First of all, if you don't play with slab books, this doesn't affect you in the slightest. Don't worry about it. Go on, mazel tov, go about your day in peace. Have a beer. The one that Greg's drinking sounds terrific. If you are playing mostly with books that have a near mint unslabbed value of $500 or less, this also does not affect you in the slightest. All the old rules remain in effect. Nothing changes. If you have high-end books, if you have Marvel Comics number one, but it's not slabbed, doesn't affect you. Don't worry about it. The only thing that we need to worry, I'm worried about is I want to know people who have heavy hitter collections who do a fair amount of slabbing. Maybe not everything you do is slab, but there's a fair amount that is. What I'm looking for is you basically reach out to me, and if you're a ComicBase user, hopefully you are if you're listening to this podcast, but if you would give me permission to have you save a backup using Sidekick to our website, but to go through your collection, churn through it and see what the before and after would look like under the new system, and then I'd like to get your feedback as to whether or not you think this is closer or further away from its true value. But if this is interesting to you, let us know, because this is something that we're keenly interested in at least taking some action on, because I don't want to keep going in a world where every time a high-end book comes up that we need to have a conference to say, well, all right, how do we interpret the multipliers this time with regard to this one, and only this book, and then change the baseline, accordingly. In other words, we're hand pricing at that point, and that's no bueno. We want the market to do the pricing. We don't want to hand price. I mean, it's not just convenience. We're trying to find the mythical market clearing price. The price where if I had this book for sale, if I had it 10% more, it wouldn't sell. If I had 10% less, it'd sell quickly, but I'd have given away money, right? You want to find the break even. You want to find the market clearing price. So, so if you wouldn't mind, if this applies to you, if you have a heavy collection and at least some of it is slabbed, let us know, because what I want to do is I want to basically open up your database, roll it through a model that takes the whole value of your collection and says, all right, as is right now under the old rules, it currently evaluates as, I don't know, say $1.2 million, right? And under the new model, maybe it evaluates to, I don't know. Because what the change is going to depend dramatically on what percentage of your books are in very high grade right now. So despite the fact that they're very, very valuable, that they're also very high grade. So you do have those unicorns, the 9.6 copy of Captain America Comics #1, or do you have the copies we all have if we have those books, the 4.5 copy that's been beat up like crazy, but which you're still proud because you have a copy at all. I mean, most surviving copies of Action #1 are not near mint. There's a great many of them that, hopefully they're better than just the #1 scissored out of the cover, which we saw go up for auction the other day. But most copies of really old, really valuable comic books are in middling to bad condition, and those ones are actually. Maybe it turns out this whole thing barely budges the price, or maybe it budges it in a big way, and then I want to get your opinion. Did this help or did this hurt? And then once we have enough feedback to say whether or not this is something we want to go with, and what do we want to change up about the algorithm, at that point, then I think if signs point towards yes. Then I think we want to maybe roll out a version of ComicBase with the split grading and see if that doesn't help us get closer to the market truth. So that's where my thoughts are on this one. I'll put my name up on the screen one more time. So please send feedback, pbickford@human-computing.com. And also, if you're interested in joining the Transformer group, that's the beta testing for the next major version of ComicBase, which is coming very shortly. Please send me a note on that one, and I'll be getting that one activated tomorrow. So that'll be our live day on that to get rolling on that. Among other things, major feature of the new version is it will be fully 64-bit compatible. Well, actually, not just compatible; it'll be written for 64-bit and only 64-bit. It actually will not run on a 32-bit only machine anymore. So if another good reason, if you're still rocking a 10-year-old something with Windows XP on it, or I don't know how old it would have to be at this point, but if you have a true antique of a machine, excellent time to upgrade. So I think that's about it. Is there anything else we need to address in the chat? I don't see it. Okay. Yeah. Yes, I got a Carol's calling you to wrap it up. All right, guys, that is about it. Thank you so much for joining us, everyone. Thank you to the mod, and I'll see you on the next one. Take care. Bye-bye.